Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing with Magnus Carlsen's miniature series. What do I mean by miniature? Miniatures are games that end in 30 moves or less. So we're not going to be looking at any long endings, but knockouts. And as I always say in my videos, I love miniatures because miniatures are a fun way to learn tactics, and I believe the best way to quickly get a grasp of an opening. And once you get the feel of the opening, then you move on to longer games to get into the deeper strategic aspects. But when you're just first learning the opening, it's good to look at miniatures because you get to see all the mistakes that allow tactical possibilities, and that's what chess is mostly tactics. So anyway, we're continuing on. I hope you've been following this series. Like I said in the first video of this series, that I'm gonna also be doing Magnus Carlsen miniatures from the black side. Right now we're concentrating on the white side, but then we're gonna go to the black side, and then after that we're gonna be looking at his world championship opponent Sergey Karyakin and looking at his miniatures from the white and black side. So stick around and you're gonna learn some chess, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. So right now we're picking up in 2003, that year Magnus Carlsen became an international master. At this time his rating was about 2385, and he's playing the player with the black pieces who is now a grandmaster, but at the time was just a master, and his name is Zaven Andrasian. And right now his rating is about 2616. So of course both of these players went on to become grandmasters, but at the time Magnus was an international master or just about to become one, and Andrasian was a master. And at this time Magnus was about 1 month from becoming 13 years old, so he was still 12 years old when he plays this beautiful game. Enjoy. Okay, Magnus started off d4, d5, c4, c6, Slav defense, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, d takes c4. We're not going to spend too much time on the openings here. We're just going through the miniatures and looking at some quick knockouts. But I just want to say briefly that what I find interesting about the Slav is that this opening after d takes c4, black is actually threatening on the next move to hold on to the pawn. So a4 is played often. I mean, there's like gambit lines where e4 is played right away, and then you get b5, and then you get these intense games after for instance e5 and knight d5, and the games get really tactical. But the main line is a4. Now when white plays this move a4, it allows time for this bishop to come out. And what allows this bishop to come out is this pawn that's here on c4, controlling this square, and keeps the queen from coming here, exerting pressure on this pawn. So it's a trade-off. Once a4 is played, this bishop is coming out, and that's one of the reasons, one of the ideas behind the Slav is to solve the problem that occurs in many queen pawn opening lines of what to do with the c8 bishop. So the c8 bishop comes out, but the concession that has to be made is white gains the center because black gives up his representation up in the center after capturing on c4. Okay, so bishop f5, knight h4. Of course, there's many ways to deal with this bishop coming out. This is probably the most direct, just attacking the bishop. We see this happening a lot of times. And the idea is pretty much the same, is to mobilize the center since black is giving it up. Okay, so knight h4 is played. e6, again, black has several ways of dealing with this. You can play bishop g6, bishop g4, even bishop e6. Okay, there's many different ways, and you can look that up if you're interested. Okay, so e6, and the idea here is just simply that, okay, white is wasting time, developing the knight and capture the bishop, and now black just continues to develop its pieces. Okay, but there is a price to pay. The price is that pawn structure gets a little compromised, and white ends up with the bishop pair. And notice in Carlsen's games, he loves that bishop pair. e3 is played. It's continuing development. Bishop d6. Bishop takes c4. Castles. Queen f3. Just put in a little pressure here on the pawn. How is black going to defend? Black has two ways here. He could play g6, or he could play queen d7. I like queen d7, but the downside of this move is now you're blocking the action of this knight. So you're pretty much relegating this knight to come into the game via a6, and then maybe trying to get to b4, and then perhaps work its way in the game here, or maybe here. The easier move to play is g6, but as you can see, a little bit of weakening occurs. But then this knight can't come here. Okay, so Magnus plays h3. Magnus' idea here, of course, is not to prevent a move like knight g4. He's not playing defensively at all, but rather Magnus wants to attack. There's a little hook here, so he wants to play g4 and attack these weakened dark squares. So h5. So Andresian prevents the move for the time being, or at least tries to dissuade Carlsen from making the move. Bishop d2. Bishop is not looking too good right now, but it gets off the back rank. The idea is to swing the king over here. Okay, knight bd7. So he brings the knight to where he wanted to bring, where he originally wanted to bring it. Castle, queen side. So the battle lines are drawn. a6. So now Andresian is planning his counterattack here. g4. F takes g4. H takes g4. H takes g4. Okay, so Magnus sacrifices a pawn, and he wants to get over to the h file. Right now we see these squares are guarded by the bishop, and the other by the pawn. Magnus' idea here is to play f3 and further open up the king side. Now, I've said this before in previous videos, is that when opposite side castling occurs, that material is not as important, because usually it's whoever gets to the king first is going to win the game. If you play Sicilian defense, you know that. So Magnus is down a pawn here, but don't think that he's losing or something like that. It's a very dangerous position for black. You got the open files here, a lot of dark square weakness, because this bishop is over here. This bishop probably belongs on g7 to protect the king, but instead it's over here on d6. So sometimes an investment of a pawn or sometimes a piece is makes the difference when opposite side castling occurs. It's really the initiative that's of utmost importance. So remember that. B5, Andresian's trying to counterattack. Magnus just drops the bishop back. Notice he doesn't take here and then allow, you know, the pieces, the rook to get into the game. He just backs up. This bishop's very powerful. Note the pin, the influence here that it has in the game, even though it's so far away. This is what's powerful about the bishop, having a pair of bishops. This bishop right here on d2 is asleep right now. But what's great about it is that if this pawn is moved eventually, then this bishop on d2 will become very powerful. c5. So now Magnus has to be concerned about the game, the c file being closed on this bishop. So what is he gonna do? Okay, so he plays knight e4. So he wants to remove a defender on f6, and he's attacking d6. All right, queen e7. Okay, so if knight takes e4, then simply queen takes e4. And the idea is there is a threat of queen takes g6. And this is due because of the pin of the f7 pawn, which makes this pawn on g6 available for capture. What does that mean? What that means is that if he goes along with this plan to shut this bishop down with c4, then this pawn gets picked up. So that's why Andresian did not play knight takes e4. Instead, he plays queen e7, connecting the rooks and having a double attack on the knight. Okay, what does Carlsen do? Carlsen removes the bishop, which is fantastic for him. Now queen takes d6. Now it's got two bishops. There's two knights, which is great for Carlsen because this is a position that's conducive to bishops. Now it doesn't look like it right now because only one bishop is really shining, and that's this white bishop, light square bishop on a2, and it looks like he's about to get shut down after c4. And then when you look at the other bishop on d2, well, he's blocked behind these pawns. But we have to be able to look forward into the future and see the potential of what could happen. These knights don't have the great prospects that these bishops do. I mean, the best that black could do is maybe, let's get rid of some of these graphics, is maybe get a knight here and then here. That would be awesome if he could do it, if he had the time. And of course he would love to maybe spring a knight down there, but again, this pawn would fall. So he really can't get the knights into white's territory. Again, he would love to make that move, but g4 pawn will fall, and then f3 would be played, kicking him out. So when we think of prospects, the bishops have better prospects going forward. Alright, let's see what happens. So after queen takes d6, now black wants to play c4. So what does Carlsen play here? D takes c5. Now this move looks kind of counterintuitive because look where the king is. You could take with check. Rook's coming to the file and everything. It's like, what? Carlsen has calculated and seen that, hey, my bishops are an important asset in this position. And for the bishops to shine, he has to open up the position. So after understanding that his king can just run over to the B and A files if need be, then it's a no-brainer, because what does this move c takes d5 do? Not only opens it up for the bishops, but also for the rook. And after d takes c5, all of white's pieces are in the game. So d takes c5 is played. Now we have this rook right here, and now we have a place for this bishop to go. Natural square right there. Look at that. And now look at all of these pieces. Everybody's participating. Just one, it's amazing. One move and now everybody's participating. Okay, so he goes to queen e7. Now you might say, well, why didn't he just take the pawn with check? Well, check. And simply bishop to c3. And now there's problems, because now this rook comes alive, and the threat is rook takes d7. Why does rook d7 work? Because after knight d7, this rook goes all the way back to the 8th rank and checkmates combination in conjunction with the bishop on c3. So that's why that didn't happen. I'll give you a quick sample. So bishop c8 and say b3, right, trying to exploit the pin of the queen right on this bishop. Let's do that anyway. Rook takes. Bishop takes c3. Rook takes f7. And the problem again is if rook takes, then that's gonna fall. And of course the king cannot take because of this bishop here. So check. The king runs over to the side, like I said. And now some kind of discover check is threatened. So because of this, so this piece has to be taken. And boom, the rook is pinned. So no defense back here. Only defense is this queen f8. And just simply queen takes a6. And if as soon as he tries to get out the pin, say king g7, and you just take, and that's a wrap. Okay, so back to the game. This is why Andrasian came back, get his queen out of trouble and defend against the threats that were coming. So Carlsen just puts the bishop on a killer square. Rook ac8. And rook takes d7 anyway. Ouch. That hurt. Now, we already saw from the last variation that knight takes d7 is not possible because of just simply rook h8 mate. These two pieces working in combination to each other. Right? So queen takes e5. So you might be like, hey, why didn't he take with the queen? Well, it's the same idea. After queen takes d7, well, queen h2, and there's no stopping that. Again, this guy can't move. There's no way out. So queen takes c5. And why queen takes c5? Not just to grab the pawn, but to defend against the same move. Queen h2. And excuse me, I use the word defend loosely because there's no defense here. Black is lost, but the idea is basically, for instance, now he can at least hang on with the move like knight to h5, blocking, the action on the h file. So that's the idea behind that. Okay, so queen takes c5, and Magnus just moved over now. King b1, b4. Now, the idea behind this move is the idea Andresian missed because the idea behind king b1 is to play queen takes. And now again the same theme. If knight takes, queen on g4, the rook the rook delivers mate. Besides that, after queen takes g4, queen takes g6 is threatened because of this pin on the long diagonal here. And that was the purpose of king b1. On this move, before the king moved, queen g4 is not possible here. So for instance, if queen takes g4, that would be a terrible blunder. Can you see why? Now I just told you that knight takes g4 is not possible because of the mate back here. But there's another move that is possible. That's simply queen takes c3 check. And that will put black right back in the game. B takes c3 is forced, and notice the key word is check. He has to respond to it. And then knight takes g4. Now there's nothing here. And white has a slight advantage at this point. I mean, he can still win, but it's like, whoa, This is why Carlsen does king b1 because now the threat is there, but there's no check. So for instance, this is what happened in the game. b4, he took and here Andresian resigned. But I'll just show you real quick. If b takes c3, then just queen takes g6 is mate. And there's all kind of pins and stuff going on here. So that's a great game by Carlsen. Alright, let's look at the next one. Alright, our next game, the black player is a player named called Zeta, who's rated 2274, and it's around the same time, about 2003. Alright, so the game started off, again, Carlsen has the white pieces, Calzetta, the black pieces. So d4, knight f6, c4, c5, the Benoni here. d5, the only way here to really pursue any advantage for white is to push. This, my friends, is called the Banco Gambit. C takes b5, a6, b takes a6, bishop takes a6, knight c3, d6, g3, and there's many ways to play this also. This was like an old line, e4, bishop takes, king takes, and then the idea is g3, king g2, etc. And white usually winds up castling what they call by hand or manually moving the king into safety. Okay, so g3 was played, avoiding that line. g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, knight f3, knight b d7, rook b1, knight b6, just piling up, the d5 pawn, a4, castle, castle. Now I just want to say really quick, like I said, this is not an opening survey, but the Banco Gambit, you say, well, what is black getting um, by giving up a pawn here. Well, as you can see, black has a fantastic pawn structure. Nothing wrong with it, and it's real easy to develop the pieces. He has very strong bishop, unopposed, very powerful, and then he has two beautiful open files for his rooks, and he gets a good amount. He gets a good amount of play, and again, just for a pawn, he gets a lot in return. So the Bengal Gambit is a pretty good opening, actually. I mean, you can't ask for really more out of an opening, except a pawn is a pawn is a pawn. So if white is able to hold the opening, just develop his pieces normally, and black is not able to extract the concession out of him, either in return of the pawn or some type of other positional advantage, for instance, like causing white to bind up his pieces and trying to defend the pawn, then black will go down because this outside pass pawn will be a killer. So black tries to become real active on those open files and use all of his pieces to either get to get white to bind up and confuse his position, trying to hold that extra pawn. So there's a lot of games like that where white gets bound up and winds up losing as a result, trying to hold on to that pawn. But theory has gone a long ways in the last 20 years, and you usually don't see Banco too much because white has found effective ways to deal with it. So okay, so castle, rook a7, b3. I want to take this time to mention fianchetto positions. Fianchetto positions, for those of you that are just starting, are these positions that I just highlighted where the bishop is usually placed right in front of the king in the castle position. This is your fianchetto setup right here. Both sides have done it. Some people say fianchetto, but I think it's pronounced fianchetto. But that's neither here nor there. Now, there's a few ways to play against a fianchetto, and this is knowledge that you can use in any kind of openings where fianchetto takes place. It doesn't matter if it's the Sicilian dragon. It doesn't matter if it's Pyrrhic defense, modern, English opening. I'm trying to think. Many openings have fianchettos. Sometimes people open the game with G3 or B6 or whatever. There's a few ways, a few strategies to play against fianchettos, and when you have the fianchetto. Now, what Carlsen employs here is one of them, and I'll share the strategies with you. One is to simply trade off. Let me get rid of the graphics. One is to simply trade off the enemy bishop. So in this case, if you're playing the white pieces, you would try to trade this bishop off, usually with your dark square bishop. So this is why you see in a lot of openings, right? One of them, the dragon, for instance, and also in the Pyrrhic, you'll see the bishop, not in this position, but I'm just going to give you an example. You'll see the bishop come to e3, queen to d2, and then followed up by bishop h6 for the quick trade-off of the bishop. That's one way of dealing with it, is trade the bishop off. And the idea behind that is once the bishop is traded off, once this piece is gone from g6, then the dark squares become weakened, and then you can put other pieces on the dark squares now that they're no longer protected. For instance, your knights. So this is why you see in the Roy Lopez, for instance, not to get in the big opening survey, but I want you to learn, in the Roy Lopez, after g6 is provoked, then you'll see a lot of times knight dropping to h2, and then coming to g4 again to jump in those squares, those weakened squares. So that's one way of dealing with the fianchettos, trading off the bishop and then opening up the h file. Okay, that's one way. The second way of dealing with the bishop, right, is to blockade the bishop. So for instance, matter of fact, let me show you because I want you to see it. I'll give you a perfect example of blockading the bishop. So sometimes you'll see an opening like this. Let's go with this, like your King's Indian attack setup, right? And we can leave it right there. This right here serves, this is called what they would call biting on granite. This is blocking the bishop. That's another strategy. And of course the opening will revolve around white trying to break their structure down. Sometimes they use c4. Sometimes they use excuse me. Sometimes you might use d3 with a later e4. You also get after these moves are played, you'll see this in the like Catalan setups. D4 is just make up some random moves, c4, etc. to provoke. Let's say after that, d takes c4, and you'll see white trying to break it down in order so he can attack. And you'll see a lot of games like that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that this is one of the strategies, is to get this bishop here, right? And you could do the same for the black pieces, is for the bishop to bite on granite or have no prospects, in other words. And a lot of games will revolve right around that. So you can't trade the bishop off, because sometimes you can't. For instance, this position, there is no lining up the queen here. Sometimes you don't have time to do that. Okay, so you can't do it. You can't trade the bishop off. You like to, but sometimes you can't. So you try to neutralize that bishop. Okay. Now, sometimes you can get the bishop to block himself in, and it's the same way. It's a blockade strategy. So, for example, d4, knight f6, c4, and you'll see this in the King's Indian. g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, castle castle, knight f3, d6. I say bishop e2 here, castle. And excuse me if I get any move order wrong or something, because I'm just going off the top of my head. d5, knight e7, right? And let's say it's just knight e1, right? Knight d7, knight d3, and f5. Notice, and then we'll play f3 here. Now, this serves our point. Notice how this bishop is blocked. This bishop is a bad bishop, and that's why many times you'll see eventually the bishop going here, or sometimes the bishop will go here and try to trade off. In this position, you want to keep your dark square bishop. Some people play by rote, and they'll put the bishop on here and queen here and trade it off anyway. In this position, the bishop on g7 is bad. It's all blocked up. You want that bishop to stay there. But but of course, what black is doing is black wants to attack on the king side, so he's making a concession here. He's like, okay, I'll block this bishop in temporarily and attack on the king side. So that's the second way of dealing with the bishop. So the first way I said was just to trade it off, right? Give you an example. So, for instance, e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes, knight f6, knight c3, g6. Here's the dragon. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, castle, queen d2. Now we know, of course, there's all kind of lines like d5 and stuff, but just to give you example, this setup right here is designed. Boom, trade this guy off. h4, h5, power up in the king side, and that's the general idea. And of course, black, often tries to preserve his bishop with move, for instance, like moving the rook and stuff like that. So then after this, you get all this kind of stuff, you know, trying to preserve the bishop. So, so those are two. So those are two ways, right? Now, the third way. So again, first way is trading off the bishop. The second, blockading the bishop. Either you blockade the bishop, right, with the have it biting on granite, like I showed you, or he blockades himself, or you provoke him to you play the position in such a way where he blockades himself. The third way, and now we're gonna go back to the game. Thanks for your patience. The third way to deal with the bishop is what is known as the scorched earth policy, which basically means, and scorched earth is an old military term. Basically, what happens in war sometimes, if an army was coming into a city or something like that, instead of the people surrendering the city, they would just burn their own city down and just retreat. And that's what the Russians famously did um, against Napoleon, actually. And they did the same thing against Hitler like a couple of hundred years later, which is very interesting. That the guy didn't learn from the experience that happened to the French. But anyway, as they were marching through with their army, the Russians wouldn't surrender any of the cities. They just simply burnt the cities down, and there were no resources, no food, or anything for the invading army. So basically, it would come in on like abandoned, just burnt, scorched land, and eventually the soldiers, suffered from hunger, thirst, or everything. There were no resources. They were just marching, you know, deeper and deeper into the land, but not getting any food, anything. They were getting sick and all of that stuff, and they, were dying, and eventually contributed to great losses and eventually their defeat. So that's a scorched earth policy, and this not only happened with the Russians and against the French and Germans, but also in other, since ancient times, you know, um, people that didn't want to surrender. But anyway, this right here is the third way of dealing with the bishop. Now you have this powerful bishop here, right? It's not opposed, it's not getting traded off. So how do you deal with it? Well, you simply move everything off the diagonal. Only thing that's on the diagonal right here is this knight. So this is what Magnus is doing here. He's moved everything off the diagonal. The pawn has been pushed up. This rook has been moved over, and the only last piece to deal with is this knight right here on c3. And then the effect is that basically the knight is, this bishop has nothing. It looks good, but it has no targets. So that's the third way. If you can't trade the bishop off and you can't block it, you just move your pawns and pieces, out of the way, basically, so there's no, nothing for it to hit. Okay, so moving on. Now notice too, if you look on the other side, white's bishop is blockaded by his own pawn. So this bishop's not too effective either. Okay, so knight h4. And the reason why knight h4 is because this pawn is attacked 3 times and only defended 2 times. So Carlsen plays knight h4, adding another defender, and that's all that bishop is right now, is a defender. Knight e8, and like I said, there's one piece still on the diagonal. Bishop b2. Now, notice Carlsen using a different strategy. So first he used the scorched earth strategy and moving things off of the dark diagonal. But now he's opposing the bishop. He's going to just simply trade it off. Knight c7. And again, this is black strategy to put tremendous pressure with his active pieces on these on white's pawns, because remember, white is a pawn up. So he's trying to create awkwardness for white. Queen d2. Rook b8. So now black has basically what he was trying to get out of the opening. Only thing that looks suspect to me is that this queen is on a8 and this bishop is here. I mean, right now it doesn't look like anything, but just tactically later on it might add up to something. Okay, so rook fe1. Just getting out of that because the bishop was keeping his pawn from moving. So now Magnus wants to play e4. Bishop drops back. There's e4. Again, notice this bishop is blocked in by his own pawns. c4. An idea, again, putting tremendous pressure on white's queen side. So at the c4, this pawn is forced to kind of stay because this pawn will drop. So Magnus plays e5. So it blocks the action of this bishop right here. And he's threatening c takes. Excuse me, not c takes. E takes d6. Now Magnus has a plan here, which is interesting. So c takes b3. Again, black is getting the concessions that he wants. Now this pawn is going to drop. E takes d6. C takes d6. Rook e7. Bishop d7. Knight e4. Strong move. And remember the strategy. It's just gonna trade off that bishop. And I've repeated it enough times. What happens after this bishop is gone? Well, the dark squares remaining become very weak. So that's the idea behind all of that. So notice that Magnus is ready to give back the pawn, but he gives it back in a way that's detrimental to black. And that's how you want to kind of deal with gambits and stuff. It's not that you really want to you always want to put the position first. Capablanca always said position first, material second. That's how you want to always think. Like, don't ever get greedy and just because your opponent gave you a pawn, just try to hold on to the pawn, no matter what, and your position's breaking down. A lot of times you give back the pawn at the right time, or you allow your opponent to regain the pawn at the right. You allow your opponent to regain the pawn at the right time. That's great for you. And notice with this bishop here, like this knight can't move because it's simply be captured. Okay, so knight c takes d5. So it's like, hey, you got his pawn, you got the pawn back. Matter of fact, right? Look at it. Let's count the pawns together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's great. Black has one more pawn than white does. White has one, two, three, four. Isn't that great? Black has regained his pawn and then some. He even has he's gambited a pawn in the beginning, was down a pawn, and now he's up a pawn. But unfortunately, his position is busted. So after bishop takes g7, king takes g7. Mission accomplished. This piece is like the soul of the position. It's the bishop, the fianchetto bishop. Once that's like the centerpiece. That's like the star of your position when you play those type of openings. Whether it's the Benoni, King's Indian, um, what else? There's a lot of fianchetto. Pyrrhic, modern. That's like your star. When you lose that bishop, it's just hard to deal with. Bronstein famously said in the Zurich 1953 candidates book, he said that without that bishop, he's talking about the fianchetto bishop, he says his position is basically pointless. And it's true, because there's nothing but weakness left behind. So it's this weakness that Carlsen's going to exploit. So immediately he gets on the diagonal. Gets on the diagonal immediately. Now even stronger than that, and can you see the stronger move here? What about knight c3? Remember I pointed out this situation earlier? So this my friends right here would just simply win the game. There's a couple of moves actually here that's exploiting the pin, because of course knight takes e7 and then the queen gets dropped. You see how bad that was? See, earlier in the game when the pawns were here blocking the bishop, then it didn't seem like anything, but now you can see, and Magnus could also play that, and the same idea. It's just exploiting the pin, but with the additional threat of that too. So he could have just won easily there. But notice what happened with the two bishops. Let's go back a few moves. Go back 5 moves. And again, remember I was pointing out the bishops. This bishop on g2 looks suspect. It's like blocked in. But Magnus had the idea that it wasn't always going to be like that. And that's the thing. You had to understand. Sometimes you have to make temporary concessions for the sake of the position as a whole. But you always gotta have the plan in mind. Like what's going to happen with these pieces. You can't don't fianchetto and then allow your bishop to get blocked or traded off. You have to understand. What your purpose is. So notice what happens with Black's bishop on g7 and what happens with Carlsen's on g2. See, his is gone, and he even gives up the pawn to free his bishop on g2. So now Carlsen plays queen d4, check, king f8. Rook takes d7. He just gives up the exchange. Like I said, he could have won just utilizing the pins. And there he goes. Now he decides to put the old pin in effect. Knight takes c3. And Carlsen doesn't even take the queen. He plays rook to e1. And the idea is just cutting off the escape here and threatening the old mate. So king g8, and now he takes the queen. And now you can get a graphic demonstration of the weakness of the dark squares. c2. Last minute effort to try to save the game, and he just simply takes, and black resigned. I mean, after b1 queen, and just take. And notice the bishop remained the whole game. So that's it for today. And stick around. We're going to be following Magnus Carlsen's ascension. We're going all the way to the world championship with this. So stick around. I hope you enjoyed that game, and I hope you learned a lot. I know the videos are kind of long, but like I gotta get get that explanation out there. It makes me feel better, like I'm really, passing on the knowledge, and I hope you appreciate it. Some of this stuff took a long time for me to learn. I was reading a lot of books, having a few coaches along the way, you know, and I hope that you could benefit. All right, so remember that, like I told you, them three ways of dealing with the bishops, fianchetto bishops. That is, and again, those rules can apply to bishops and other bishops in general, but definitely the fianchetto bishops. When somebody fianchettos early, just remember that's one of the strategies in the game that you have to consider is how you're gonna deal with that bishop. Are you gonna block it? Are you gonna trade it off? Or are you gonna apply a scorched earth policy? Because if you don't, that bishop will run wild on your position and be like Magnus's bishop, just dominating the board at the end of the game. So anyway, that's enough for me, and I'll catch you on the next video.